What's going on, everybody? It's Chris Classic dropping another video. As you can see, I'm home. I got the background. I know a lot of my recent videos have been car vlogs because I'm going on the way to work, and I just wanted to get a few things off of my chest. So now I have time today. Before I go on, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you comment if you agree, disagree, or just indifferent on it. Make sure you subscribe to the C3 Ultimate Wrestling channel as well for exclusive content. Now, let's talk about something that is always discussed every time someone's favorite wrestler loses, or a title change happens, or somebody new debuts. Okay, now, losing does not mean that someone is buried, and losing does not mean that somebody is squashed all the time. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to use a few examples, but we're going to go into it because I think that every time a wrestler loses, especially if it's a fan favorite, a lot of people think that they are squashed and they are buried. Now, that does not mean the case sometimes. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut it up and we're going to separate it. I didn't show you how to make the work. I just play the game. Okay, let's go into it. Let's acknowledge the fact that losing happens. And pro wrestling events, there's not going to be a whole show, or there shouldn't be a whole show where everybody wins, or it's a draw, or it's a time limit draw. Like, that probably wouldn't bring anybody back to the event. Someone has to be pinned, tapped out, can't respond. Something has to happen. Someone's arm or a team's arms have to be raised at the end of the show. Now, with the person losing, that can do two things. Some people might not be behind you, or they're going to come back and cheer for you because now you're the underdog, i.e. Rey Mysterio, Daniel Bryan, a lot of smaller wrestlers. Like, these things can contribute to making a wrestling superstar. And I think with some of the indie ego, and that's what it is, losing just messes with stock, apparently, to the point to where people feel like they have to win. But then when you make it to the big time, some people might still say, who are you? Especially if you haven't made a name for yourself yet. Not knocking it, but it's just 100% true. So let's go into it. Squash matches do not mean that somebody is buried. This is coming from someone who's seen a couple squash matches and didn't like them. Squash matches are necessary in pro wrestling because you can make a star or a monster heel like that. Squashes tell the story that this man can take out a man in a few seconds, or a woman can take out a woman in a few seconds without even trying or trying their best, going against solidified stars or local talent and beating them to the point to where the next match people might have their eyes glued to the match. You know, they'll be on the phone by the time they look up, the match is over. Oh man, I missed it. I was trying to take a picture. I was trying to record. Or I was trying to do something on Facebook. Squash matches are unnecessary. A lot of people don't like them. A lot of people hate them, especially when they're on like pay-per-view shows or like special shows. But they are real good eye-openers, and they also help the wrestlers sometimes. Goldberg did them. Brock did them. Look at where they are now. And with Brock is solidified as a great wrestler, as one of the greatest of all times. Regardless of how you feel his work rate has changed or not, we have to realize that Brock is up there. Like, even with squash matches, right? I didn't like how Kofi lost. Kofi Mania was running wild. And then all it took was Brock Lesnar, F5, 1, 2, 3, and it was over like that. It sucked, but at the end of the day, we still like Kofi. People still cheer for Kofi. Everybody likes New Day. Look at everything that's going on with him, but since he represents a faction in the New Day. It sucked. I hated it, but it was Brock Lesnar. You got to think about it. This is the guy that beat Undertaker and defeated him at WrestleMania, ending his streak. As a person who also hated that, I felt that, who else? We can say CM Punk. We can say all of these people all you want to. But when you look at the track record of Undertaker and Brock Lesnar's feuds, and who has won the most? Undertaker, to my knowledge. I could be wrong, but when I'm looking pay-per-view wise, Undertaker won one time, and I believe that was SummerSlam when he hit Brock between the legs and he passed out from the Hell's Gate. But going even back to Ruthless Aggression era and Brock was the champ, this guy was really beating The Undertaker like it was nothing and it was nobody's business. It established him more as a star. He was already a star because he beat guys like Kurt Angle, he beat guys like The Rock, he beat all of these guys. But The Undertaker is known as the man in wrestling at times. So it worked out for him. Goldberg in WCW, it worked out. And then even when he came back and faced Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series, a lot of people were upset with that match, but it worked out. It did. Now, jokingly, a lot of us do be like, dang, Goldberg should retire. I'm like that too. As a person who grew up watching Goldberg and like Goldberg, I still do like Goldberg. But at the same time, it's just like, oh, will he have a good match or will he have a bad match? And it is what it is. You know, a lot of people are still upset on how he squashed The Fiend, which we could say is on the buried meter before he got released. I will say that. But he beat Brock before at WrestleMania 20. A lot of people hated that match because they knew that both of these guys were out the door. But this was the guy who can beat Brock out of anybody that they still had. This was the guy that can beat Brock. And the way he did it, it made him a solidified hero and a main eventer. Kids knew who Goldberg was. We, as older people, we look up stuff and see stuff and say, okay, well, we don't like Goldberg because of A, B, C, D, and E, F, G. But the guy literally came out there saying he wanted to be a hero to his son. And then all these other kids were probably like, okay, well, he looks like a hero. He looks like he can still go. Older people still like Goldberg. Like I said, a lot of people aren't on the computer, on the internet, looking at behind-the-scenes stuff and if he's a good guy or a bad guy or what does he do on his personal time or whatever like that. It is what it is. It's a part of the game. So, squash matches are necessary and they could help. They could hurt too, but they can help. If we're going off of squash matches being short, if you want to look at a good match, it wasn't even considered a squash match to me, but it was less than a few minutes. If you have the time, look up Ming versus Big Show. Well, the Giant in WCW, I'm sorry. They did some strikes, and it was at a standstill for a little bit. You know, Ming is one of those dudes, man. He's one of them dudes. And the only reason why Ming lost was because he couldn't reach Big Show's throat to do the tongue and death grip. And Big Show was bigger and could do the choke slam. Now, after the match, I don't think it hurt Ming. Everybody knows who Ming is now. Everybody talks about how scary he was and how he still is scary. But I'm just saying it was a short match. And it had a purpose just to show how dominant the Giant was at the same time. But at the same time, it also made Ming to some people, man, like this guy is legit. He was this close to beating the Big Show or bumping him or knocking him over. This is just a part of it. Going into the next one is Buried. Oh, let's before that, let's talk about even the Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch thing. There's too many B's around here. No offense. I hated it. I understood it. I think that it wasn't necessary. If Becky could have won, they could have had a decent match in my opinion, but I understood. You were trying to get viewers in and wanted more people to look at the product and stuff like that. This was also the week that CM Punk debuted at AEW. You were trying to compete. You was trying to do something. It was supposed to be Sasha. It wasn't Sasha. It was Becky. And Becky came out, you know, and that just took everybody's breath away. Everybody wanted Becky to come back, and she did it. She just stole on Bianca and gave her a rock bottom, and that was it. Did it really bury Bianca? No, Bianca is still challenging for the title. Bianca has been improving. Bianca has been doing a lot of things. And I see her winning the title. I don't know if it'll be anytime soon, but I do see her being a multiple-time women's champion. Because more people got behind Bianca. And I believe that Bianca even picked it up herself and started doing a lot better. She was already great. She was very good in the ring. But to me, promo-wise, and just getting comfortable with everything and how she comes out, she looks like a wrestler. Her moveset screams a wrestler. So it worked out because so many people are behind her. And the representation factor is also a great thing as well. Now, going back into Buried. If a wrestler is buried, it's usually more with Sometimes there's storylines, or it could be a string of losses. But it doesn't mean that if you lose a lot that you're buried. Sometimes it's a good story. For example, Daniel Bryan's story with the Authority was the hottest thing at the time. And he was losing a lot of matches. Triple H, Orton, other people. He was losing a lot. He had the feud with Bray Wyatt. He was losing a lot to the Wyatt family. And then they teamed up and lost to the Usos, I believe, or was it the Rhodes family? One of the two. It was a cage match where Daniel Bryan became face again. He was losing a lot, but at the same time, people wanted to see him every day. Every time. The yes chance. This was also a scary moment because this was around the time where Daniel Bryan's injuries were piling up. So people really wanted to see it. When I went to a WWE live event, a lot of people were expecting Daniel Bryan, and it was so big that the announcer at the time, I want to say it was Justin Roberts, he said, unfortunately, due to injuries, Daniel Bryan will not be here. If you want a refund, you can go up to the ticket door and you can get a refund. That's how big Daniel Bryan was. The same Daniel Bryan that was losing on Raw and losing on pay-per-views would get the title and lose it in 2 seconds to Randy Orton or Triple H, or Triple H would play a part into it. That didn't bury him. That cements a legacy in WWE to me. Now, I know he's in AEW, but he may be back to WWE. I think he's left on wonderful terms with the company. But I don't think that him losing a lot the way he did, it buried him. I don't think it messed his legacy up. I don't think that it squashed what they had. I mean, the guy won the belt at WrestleMania. And let me tell you, he won it at the WrestleMania where everybody was still shocked that Undertaker lost and his streak was broken. So that's already enough pressure in itself. And then you beat former heavyweight champions in a triple threat match. And I know the jokes about Daniel Bryan being in triple threats, they're very big, high, and flourishing now, which are hilarious, by the way. But that was a big thing. And unfortunately, the injury, and then he came back. And then it was injury, then he came back again. But like I said, it's not a bury because somebody loses a lot or if it's a wrestler that you like. Now, I would say that Bray was pretty much buried, though. I think, ironically, a lot of people were trying to be patient with how WWE was going to do Bray. But yeah, they did him dirty. Now, I don't know. I don't know if it was because of his personal life, and I don't know. I don't know if they just didn't believe in him. I don't know if it was an attitude. I don't know. But it would be like, dang, he's going to win this match, and he doesn't win this match. Now, as a person that's not even a big fan of The Fiend, you felt that all of this money that they put into this character and the production, you thought they were going to do something with him, especially when they did the Firefly Funhouse match with John Cena. You thought, especially after that, he beat John Cena in a kooky cinematic match. You thought that they were going to do something. Then the thing with the Hell in a Cell match, and he was beating up Seth Rollins, and they ended the match because he was beating up Seth Rollins. And then, sorry to bring this up because I know this makes some of y'all blood boil. And then he beat Seth Rollins, and then he lost to Goldberg, who we just talked about a few minutes ago. So yeah, I mean, burying does happen. Sometimes it's for personal or professional reasons. Sometimes they have nothing for you. I mean, there was a group called the Job Squad. No offense, that was them. They knew what they had to do. Just incredible. He has a lot of podcasts and interviews that he said that he knew what they wanted him to do, and he did it. And that's the problem with wrestling nowadays. A lot of people do not believe in role players. Like, you have people that do not mind losing. They just want to go out and have fun. But sometimes as a fan, you might like this person who's losing a lot, and you can get behind them, buy the merch and everything like that. And then as soon as they lose or they get buried, oh, they should go to this company or they should go to that company. They're being misused here. They're being misused there. But what happens if they do the same thing at the other company? Maybe the other company is paying them more money, but at the same time, they know what they have to do. Everybody cannot win. Every loss is not a squash. Every loss is not a bury. Now, everybody talks about Triple H's reign of terror. Were those berries? Yes. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I felt that the plot was lost. And it could have been because of his relationship with the boss. But the plot was lost. As a heel doing that, that's one thing. But then even Cena. Now, I don't think Cena's reigns were a squash. Honestly. I mean, a bury. I don't think he buried these guys because some of these guys were already multiple time champions by the time they faced Cena. These guys were already solidified Hall of Famers before they faced Cena. Majority of them were. Now, I would have had Lashley win at American Bash that year. Boy, I'm telling y'all my age, but he didn't. But at the same time, Bobby Lashley was damn near out the door a year later and stuff. It's good to see him come back. But anyway, yeah, it was a lot of people that I felt should have beat him, but they didn't. But I don't think that it was like a reign of terror. I know a lot of people around that time, they started booing Cena because they were sick of him, and he was beating a lot of the favorite wrestlers. But it doesn't mean that when he beat Triple H and when he beat Shawn Michaels and when he beat Kurt Angle and when he beat Chris Jericho or Batista, it does not mean that he buried them or he squashed them. Sometimes these things are done for storytelling. And even burying can be done in storytelling. People will wind up cheering for that person or whatever like that. Zack Ryder had a huge following at one point, especially due to his YouTube channel before WWE buried that. You see what I did there? I know that was corny, but he had a huge following to the point that people were chanting his name while The Rock was speaking. The freaking Rock was speaking, and then you hear "We Want Ryder," woo woo woo. People were behind this guy to the point that he even was defending his internet championship on WWE programming. So, and now he's doing good on the independents. Some of the stuff I'm not a fan of, but he still has somewhat of a decent following. But I do think that WWE buried him. That's for another time. But yeah, I just think that let's just calm down before we just say somebody's buried or somebody's squashed, because sometimes that's just not the case. Sometimes it's a story. Sometimes it's going to something else. Let's wait and see how far this goes. Burying does happen. People being buried does happen. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not. We just never know. Just enjoy wrestling. But we all have an opinion. I'm not saying that you should not have your opinion about wrestling, but I'm also saying, like, if you're going to use these terms, just make sure you know what you're talking about. That's it. This is Chris Classic. Have a great day. Let's take it home.